Hey YouTube, what's up? It's Diaphone, and today we're going to be doing a matchup tier chart for Eno. We're going to be talking about what matchups are good, what matchups are bad, in my opinion. You know, it's still early, it's still month one. And we're going to be giving you tips for each matchup and talk about why I think the matchup is a certain way. And as always, if you guys like the content, please consider supporting me by sharing, subscribing this video. Anyways, let's get into it. So I made the tiers advantage ? Because I'm really not sure. Spoiler, I'm not really sure if Eno wins any matchups, but I think she has a lot of even matchups. And then we'll call bad tier, which I'm going to be really hesitant to put numbers around it because again, it's still a little early and I'm still not fully fleshed out on my opinions. And then we'll call it even worse tier, which I'm sure you can guess who goes there. So let's go in alphabetical order. Let me pull up my notes as well. All right, so let's talk about Anji. I actually think Anji is either bad or even. A lot of people would put Anji in bad, and you know, actually one of the most recent tournaments that Daru entered, Anji beat him, even though Anji is considered to be the bad character. But I actually think it's even. Anji actually has pretty good options to counter Eno's tools. I think Ko, which is like the spin and then the anti-air, I think it's really strong against Eno because it covers a lot of the space she wants to be in. Spin's really good because it can beat stroke. And one of the things I really don't like about this matchup is the counter. So you can literally do anytime Eno does note, you do wake up counter, and it's pretty hard to stop. But there are certain setups to beat wake up counter, such as doing a note and then like full jumping instead of hover dash, or you can like aim the note above them and it whiffs and then you get punished on the counter. So there's some cool stuff that you can do with that, but counter is one of the hardest reversals I think for Eno to play around because you can't safe jump it, and Eno has some really good safe jumps. But I think what makes this matchup even is that I think Eno controls neutral pretty well. 6P is really good in this matchup, so if you ever see him spin, 6P is a really good option because it'll beat the follow-ups like Ko, or it'll beat the Fujin follow-up. You can kind of use note really liberally against him, and he has to kind of guess. He can't really play like counter footsies with butterfly. If he tries to zone you out of butterfly, you can just stroke under and punish him. You know, spin's hard to deal with, but if you just jump at him and you keep hover dashing him, you know, you're pretty much at advantage if he counters your spin there. And of course, you can always empty jump throw, and Eno has a good throw game. One other thing that's pretty cool about this matchup is if he does Fujin and then the low, a lot of characters have trouble punishing that space, but Eno can actually just do 2k into HCL and it punishes from like pretty much full range. So it makes Fujin pressure a little risky against him. Same thing with if he does Fujin, the P follow-up, which is like the little projectile, that's plus. If he does 5k, you can actually 6p that. You know, Eno actually has some pretty good answers to his pressure as well. That's why I have it as even. Next on the list, Axel. So this one's a really polarizing one. I think a lot of people don't know where this should be on the list. I personally put it in bad. I don't think it's her worst matchup. Everyone's like, oh my god, you can win Eno versus Axel, you're so good. And it's like, the matchup's actually not that bad now. You know, this used to be our worst matchup in Xrd, but I think it's a lot better now because you actually have ways to get in. Dive kick's really good against some of his laggier stuff, and stroke is really strong against some of the stuff to get in. You know, of course, Eno not having a traditional dash makes this matchup way harder because you can't just like dash under his 5p. So 5p controls a lot of space. You can get around 5p with stroke, but that's pretty hard because you have to get into stroke range in the first place and you can't really like dash your way there. So some of the ways I try to get in against Axel are try to jump and then dive kick, and like let's say you see a Rensen, you can actually hold your dive kick, and if he does the pullback, then you let your dive kick go on reaction to the pullback, and it's really hard for him to stop. It's actually really hard for him to stop dive kick in general unless he does like preemptive stuff like 5p or 6k. And then once you get in, he explodes. But again, it's kind of hard to get in, right? And make sure the punish is super, right? Jump in between the gap. Oh, also 6p round start is really good against him. It beats like his 2h. It beats like all of his really common options. It beats 5p. Consider doing 6p round start. That'll force him to jump away, and then you can kind of snipe his jump aways with stroke. And one other thing about this matchup is if he does snail, the air version or ground version, you can punish with HCL. So that's pretty nice, and not a lot of characters have that either. All right, who do we got next? Chipp. So Daru thinks Chipp is in even worse lull tier. I don't think it is, actually. I think it's just bad. I mean, Chipp is obviously really strong. He's probably like the biggest contender for the number 2 spot in this patch. But I think Eno can play at his pace very well, right? Stroke is really good against him. He's going to try to go a lot in the air because he doesn't want to deal with your stroke, and he's going to try like J2K. But you can kind of stroke around, make the J2K whiff, and then punish on the recovery. Chipp's mix-up in general is just like, It feels like he gets a little more risk reward than Eno. Like the numbers are just more in his favor, which makes him a stronger player, and it makes this a bad matchup. But I don't think there's anything inherently bad about the matchup, and your tools are pretty effective against Chipp. Obviously, you know, it's dependent on like how well you can react to stuff, like how well you can react to leaf throw, how well can you react to Alpha Blade. It's not really any tips there. You just gotta make sure that, you know, train your reactions. You can punish the overhead. The overhead Rekka was 6 HS into a crap ton of damage, which is pretty nice. One thing that Daru likes to do is after the mid Rekka, low Rekka, if he goes into the high Rekka, the frame trap, you can actually stroke under that. And also stroke's a really good option if he decides to let the low Rekka rock or do nothing after. So stroke after a second Rekka is really good. Also 2k will punish the second Rekka, but again, it's kind of scary because you can just cancel the overhead. 5p is really good against J2k as well because you can get a trade and you can get it in your favor. You can also like try react with 6p. You generally want to guess on anti-air, either make stuff with 5p to J2k or 6p anti-air. Oh, one other thing about leaf grab. He does leaf grab and you react, do instant air jump S, and you can actually punish it. Not every character can do that, which is pretty nice. You just do JS and the dive kick, and then you get knocked down and you can run your mix. So it makes it pretty risky for him to do that too. All right, let's talk about Giovanna. So I just lost to Giovanna tournament. I got second, by the way. So this matchup, I'm debating between even Warslaw and bad. I think it's pretty bad. Stroke, which is your main tool. Any character that shuts down stroke really well, like Axel because it's hard to get in the stroke range, or Mei because the buttons and moves she wants to normally do just beat stroke, is gonna be a really bad matchup. And the same thing with Geo. Geo's neutral consists of 2 buttons, right? There's Church of 5S and there's the Church of 2D. And the good Giovannas will use both. And unfortunately, stroke loses to both of them. And so the buttons that she wants to press beat the stuff that you want to press. So you have to kind of play a weird neutral game. You can't do HCL because it whiffs on her standing. So you have to do a lot of like regular jump HSs. You have to do some like 2 HSs as counter pokes. If they're doing a lot of 2D, you gotta like hover dash over it and punish, but it's really tough to do that. And Note's pretty good. They can't spiral arrow, but as long as they're not in spiral arrow range, you can go away with Note and then try to make your way in. So there is that kind of like weird neutral where like if you can get a Note off, it's not that bad for you. I'm debating it's either one of these two. I'll put her at the end to kind of signify that it's one of the worst matchups in the bad category in my opinion. All right, we got next Kai. So I'm debating about Kai. I think he's either advantage or even. And part of it is because I don't think Kai is a very strong character this patch, but you could stroke a lot of his stuff. Stroke goes under fireball, punishes. 6p recovers fast enough if he's trying to jump at you and do an air fireball, and then you can stroke under the air fireball and punish. So fireball is really risky against Eno. His buttons are good, but again, he doesn't have like the same kind of pressure that Soul or other characters have, so feels a little less scary on defense. Yeah, I think it's more of just like a character power level and all of your Eno tools work against Kai. I don't really have too much to say there. One of the keys in this matchup, make sure you know when the flip is minus and when it's plus. If you block it standing and you're not in shock state and it's pretty close, then he's actually -1. And so make sure to take your turn after that. If you're in shock state or you like block it crouching or space, then he's generally going to be plus. So make sure you stand your ground there. I talked to Daru. Daru thinks this matchup's also advantage Kai. I'm not quite sure. It might be even, but I think just the general strength of Kai right now, I think puts it at advantage. It's kind of tough to say. This might be my least familiar matchup though. I don't know. You know what? Daru thinks it's advantage. I'm gonna put even, but I do think it's probably one of the easier even matches. Okay, Leo. Shoutouts to Leo. I think this. I don't know. I debate on this. Is it even worse or bad? The good points in this matchup are Eno does pretty well neutral. Stroke goes under his fireball. You can anti-air him pretty cleanly with 6p. 6p in general is just really good against his pokes. Stroke's really good against his pokes. The buttons that beat Stroke are pretty laggy and you can whiff punish. Note's pretty good against him. So in neutral, you actually do pretty well against him. The issue is everything outside of neutral kind of sucks. When you're on offense against him, his DP is probably like one of the best, if not the best, reversal options in the game against Eno, especially a 50 meter, because like other DPs where you can like cross up their inputs, you can't really do that to Leo because it's a charge flash kick, right? So it makes pressuring him hard. The hitbox is really big, so they're just gonna DP RC. In theory, you know, once you start hitting the meaty grabs and safe jumps, then it's a little less tricky and you can kind of bully him, but it's kind of hard to do that consistently, at least for me at this point. And so I still think it's pretty bad on offense, but you still have to run it, right? It's still in your advantage. And in defense, you know, Ino's low health and lack of DP just makes defending against Leo pretty tough, right? Just the risk reward he has on some of his options are really good. Obviously, you know, make sure you throw the cross up, but it's a little more to it than that, right? Leo has a bunch of options to mix you up and it can be kind of tricky. But I think just because I think Ino does pretty decently in the neutral against Leo, I think it's not even worse low. I think it's just bad. Yeah, and you have to really try hard to bait it. Like you have to like backdash from like not point blank range to bait it. So you can't RC it. It's pretty tough. Alright, so we got Millia next. I actually think Millia is even. I don't think it's that bad. I think Stroke does really well against her. You have a 6P to keep her out of there. You have jump Ps, you have jump Hs to keep her out of the air. They both die when you get close. I'm starting to understand their mix up a little bit more. It's still real. It's still kind of hard to deal with, but they both want to play a really fast pace and a really volatile pace. And I think they just kind of match each other 1-to-1 on that. And it's like, who can mix the other person up first? That's kind of the matchup it feels like. I don't really have too much to say other than that. No real specific tech. Other than Stroke is oddly good against disc meaties. So unless she like meaties you true, like you can low profile the disc. And that's pretty funny to get out of some of her stuff. Oh, also JH and the JH you can interrupt with 5L because your 5L is 5 frames. But of course you can go low and beat that. I do like backdash a lot in this matchup too. Backdash Stroke, hover JHs. I don't think your ground footsies are that good, so she's gonna have to take the air and then you got a 6P or Stroke around her. Let's go Nagoriyuki. I think Nagoriyuki is also a bad matchup. I'm gonna put it right here. I don't think it's as bad as Chipp, Leo, or Giovanna, but it's still pretty bad. This is another, like, I think Ino does pretty well neutral. So there's like 2 phases to the game against Nago, right? There's the Nago has 0 to 2 bar Blood Rage, which his pokes aren't as good, but if you ever try to throw a note, he can do a spin or he can do a clone dash, and those are really hard to deal with, right? So you generally want to stay away from note unless you're like full screen, and then it's kind of hard for him to react to. 2S is really good against stopping Stroke, and it's a button he wants to press a lot, but you can also hover over that. You know, 6P is obviously really good against some of his pokes, especially like 5S. It just feels like when Nago gets in, his risk reward is better than your risk reward, but if he ever gets the 2-bar Blood Rage, you can kind of keep him out a little bit easier with note, and then that forces him to do, I think, stand heavy, and you could Stroke under that. This matchup's all about like placing really good strokes, because strokes beat a lot of the options he wants to do, but he has really good ways to blow you up for Stroke, like just whiffing 2S. But then when he's whiffing 2S's, you can do dive kicks, but it's kind of tricky to be in dive kick range because of 2H. But then if he's whiffing 2H, you can reaction punish with like HCL or Stroke, right? HCL is actually pretty good in this matchup. I don't like HCL very much. I think it's pretty weak in this version, but it's pretty good to whiff punish some of Nago stuff as well. And make sure you know how to punish Nago super on block. I lost the tournament game because of that. But you can air dash and punish, and that's usually most consistent. And know about the Blood Rage. One thing I don't see people do a lot against Nago is that if next knockdown any Blood Rages, back off so you can get a punish with H Stroke and then do your full hit confirm after that. Other than that, it's just knowing how to defend, look for the command dashes, check them. 6P is really good against certain things. Oh, HCL punishes the 2-hit slash. I think it's this 236H. You can HCL that if they're just ending block strings with it. But that's pretty uncommon nowadays, I feel. Oh, one thing I like against Nago is the Nagos that do 2S round start to beat your Stroke. You can actually 2S his 2S, and your 2S is 1 frame faster. So don't let Nagos get away with that round start. It also beats start around 2HS. And I saw a comment earlier about like Nago's 5K beating everything after H Stroke, and that's not true. You can do 6P. Like every character here, you can pretty much always RPS after H Stroke. You just gotta figure out the right options and be a little creative. Alright, let's talk about... Oh, I skipped Faust. So much for going in alphabetical order. I don't have any notes on Faust. That's why I missed him completely. I'm honestly not sure about Faust. I think it might be advantage or it might be even. I'm gonna put 2 question marks here because I really don't know. In theory, I think it's advantage. I feel like H-stroke is really hard to deal with as Faust. If you're going up and camping with bomb bags, you can HCL that. But honestly, I'm not gonna lie, guys. I don't know anything about this matchup. There's no one that plays Faust. I just hear Faust get downplayed, so I assume it's not that bad. Maybe I should make like a question mark. Yeah, I'm gonna keep Faust down here. I really don't know about Faust, but I think it's even or advantage. But I have never played a high level Faust. And I know Daru, I think Daru thinks it's even too, so. He was in his right spot the whole time. I didn't forget about him. Oh, Eno's obviously 5-5. I always joke that Eno's best matchup is Eno, so maybe we should put it in advantage, but nah. Not too much to say about the mirror. It's whoever gets momentum and whoever goes nuts on the other person first usually wins. Make sure you turn your brain off before the opponent and you'll usually win the mirror match. Alright, so this is, in my opinion, one of the worst matchups for Eno is Mei. And the reason is, what does Mei like to do in neutral? Jump around a lot and dolphin, or do like 5S or 2S. Pretty much all those options lose the stroke. It looks like stroke should go under dolphin, but it doesn't for some reason. And because of that, it makes it really scary to do dolphin, especially because the pokes that Mei wants to do too also lose the stroke. So doing stroke's really hard. Her options after you block a S dolphin aren't the best, even though Mei's -5. So you can do stuff like 6P, or you can do HCL to catch the backdash, or you can do another stroke. But I feel like other characters have a better time after S dolphin on block. I feel like anti-airing her is really hard. I mean, my 6P gets clipped more versus her than any other character, I think because of how low some of her stuff reaches. That's not true. Ram JH is a mess. It's like, what button do you press in neutral? It's like, you just press a lot of 6P and like 2H to whiff punish, or to like guess punish on Dolphin or some of her S normals. That's how it feels. So you're just like doing a lot of 2H, doing a lot of 6P, trying to jump around a little bit. But once you get in, it's not bad. Obviously, once Mei gets in, she just kills you in one hit. So that's not fun either. One of the other keys about this matchup is make sure you mash correctly after S Dolphin. You know, if you ever see a Mei player do S Dolphin and then run up and command grab you, and it seems like a true combo, it's actually not. So make sure you mash correctly and jump out. And if they ever do ball on block, just 214K it. Oh, apparently Mei comes before Millia in the alphabet too. I'm just fucking up here completely. Alright, let's talk about Potemkin. So Daru thinks this matchup is in Eno's favor. I don't know. I think it's even. I've played this matchup a decent amount. If Eno plays perfectly, I think it's advantage. But playing perfect against Pot is kind of tough, right? And I have a bad habit of like trying to 6P Mega Fist and I just die, and that's not cool. But you know, there's some stuff I can do better, but you know, Mega Fist is obviously minus on block, you can get punished. Sometimes -6, you're 2Ks, 6 frames. If he does slide head, the full screen knockdown move, you can dive kick that on reaction and get a punish, which is pretty nice. That's actually pretty good in this matchup too. You can angle it over his flick, and then you can punish. And if he's like just whiffing flick, you can HCL it on reaction to get a whiff punish. HCL is pretty good in this matchup. 6HS is like surprisingly good in this matchup too, because it'll catch the Mega Fist. But I feel like it just takes one hit, bruh. It just takes one hit with Pot and you just explode and die. And I hate dealing with back Mega Fist on defense. Anytime he has Hammerfall with 50 meter, Hammerfall is the charge move, yeah. He's really scary to deal with in neutral. You don't have a DP to get out of some of his stuff. So yeah, I think it's even. I know Daru thinks it's advantage, but I could see it going either way. I'll probably put it here to signify that I think it's one of his best matchups though, regardless. Yeah, mistakes just cost you too much against Spot. I think if you play perfect, it's probably advantage Eno, but I have a bit to get there. So maybe in like a month or two, if the patch is the same, it might be Eno's advantage. Alright, Ramlethal, I think it's bad, but it's not as bad as some of the other characters. 6P's really good, obviously, in this matchup. Stroke's actually really good because it goes under 5S and 5HS and Sword Toss, which is all really good. It's all the stuff that Ram wants to do in neutral, you can go under with Stroke. So she has to RPS her really hard in neutral. Super is obviously a pain to deal with, but it's just like any other DP, right? The thing that kills me in this matchup is dealing with JH. Even though Eno 6P is the god, you still can't anti-air JH. So you really have to dance around that range. But you can't 6P her JS, but then she could just empty jump and whiff punish your 6P. Some of the notes I have on her, you know, if you block the ramp super, try to punish with dust. That's really good. Against a corner pressure, if she does sword toss 5k, you can actually 6p after the sword toss and beat the 5k. Not a lot of characters can do that. Also, you have really good options to get out of the sword toss of like double jump, dive kick out, and that sort of thing. Yeah, you can also 6p between the 5s and sword throw, but if they delay it right, then it's kind of hard to get out. But generally, you know, after you block the sword toss, your options are pretty decent. You can also stroke after the sword toss or before the sword toss if they're doing it like mid-screen. You have a lot of good options against sword toss pressure in the corner and decent options in neutral. But I think just because Ram is really strong this patch and crafts out damage, I think it's bad. I could see if like the characters get normalized a little bit, this is definitely even matchup or maybe advantage Ram, because I think Ino's tools deal well with Rams. All right, so Soul. I think this is actually Ino's only winning matchup. Nah, I'm just trolling. This matchup's trash, bro. Soul is way too good. Soul is actually way too good. I think Soul's clearly number one in the game, and even though I think Ino's tools deal well with Soul, I actually think Soul has a pretty hard time dealing with Stroke. You don't really have good ways to beat it other than like preemptive Gunflame, but you can punish Gunflame with HCL at the right range, or you can dive kick it on reaction too. So Stroke is your friend here. So he has to do like preemptive 2S or just like stay out of that range, or, you know, Gunflame, or what usually happens is that he just dashes up and 6S's you and then you just get hit. But you have some pretty good options, and you can actually Stroke under 6S too. It's just risky because you might whiff your Stroke and then he can take advantage, right? But it's just Soul's overwhelming strength is really apparent here. Another thing that makes this matchup really bad is 5k from Soul. It actually screws over a lot of what Ino can do, whether it be re-jump pressure or even S dive kick on block. It's safe against everyone to cast except Soul, I'm pretty sure. He gets a crap ton of damage off of it, so it almost feels like you can never dive kick unless you're like reacting to something, which absolutely sucks. 6p is also really good against him, so if any time a Soul's doing like 5S into 5S, just 6p the gap. It also can beat like 5S into 5HS if they leave too much of a gap. It beats a lot of things, so 6p Stroke is like kind of how you play this matchup. They're both really good tools, but the risk reward on Soul is just OD, and even just stuff like punishing his SDP is tough for some reason, right? One other thing, don't throw a note full screen. You literally can't throw a note in this matchup unless the Soul's like half asleep, because they could just vortex on reaction from full screen. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but that's a thing too. You can like note PRC, but then you don't get much off of it. Yeah, curse matchup. And Zato, I think Zato is actually even. Again, it's kind of like the Millia syndrome, where it's like who can rush down who and whose offense is cleaner. Whenever I play against a Zato and I lose, I'm like, well, I should have mixed them harder, essentially. And, you know, obviously there's the basic stuff you can do against Zato, like interrupting the P version of Eddie. Notes actually, the one thing that changed my mind about this matchup, I used to think it was really bad. And I was like, you can't use note at all because he's just going to reflect the note. And it turns out they're reflecting the note. If you angle it downwards, you can just hover over the note and start your pressure that way. And same kind of thing, if you aim it high, then you can just stroke under the note. So you have a lot of options against his reflect, and makes it not a very good option as long as you're on point with how you angle your note. So I actually think neutral's pretty good because you can use note pretty liberally in this matchup. And the other thing is, if you're on point, like jumping from some of his block strings, like let's say 2S into drill, Ino's one of the rare characters that can actually punish that, because you block the 2S, you jump, and then you dive kick the drill, and then you start your offense. I think this matchup's actually pretty decent, but I do think Zato is a little stronger of a character, which makes this back to even. Yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, Zato has no reversal. You can mix them. I actually don't think the neutral is very bad against Zato. No's just really good against him. Yeah, 6p is good against killing the Frog Eddie. I'd say like the matchups I have the least experience in are like Faust, and then probably like Kai. Giovanna is definitely something I need more experience in. Anji too. I feel like all I do is play against Nagos, Souls, Maze, Chipps, and Leos. And Rams and Axles. I feel like I understand this portion of the tier list good. I don't understand these as well, which is probably why I have half of these uneven. Alright, so guys, hope you found this useful. If you have any other matchup tips I didn't cover here, specifically for Ino, curious to get what you guys think, so leave a comment in the comments below. And if you like the content, if you like the video, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. And if you think some of these placings should be changed, let me know. I'm really curious to get your guys' take. Thanks everyone, and have a great day.